There's the good doggy. That's my boy.
It won't take a moment.
Sure, Father. About that manuscript, Father.
Ah, excellent. Look, I found it. Copied excerpts from the work of Magister Parisiensis.
The who?
Matthew of Yanov, the master of Paris as he was known. He studied there. He was a university master. He traveled a lot and was very learned. Did I tell you about Jan Hus?
Oh, yeah. I'm not likely to forget that in a hurry.
Ha ha, right, me neither. Anyway, as I was saying, Hus wasn't alone, see? There are other masters who have similar ideas, just that Hus knows how to talk about it better than anyone. But this Matthew, he was one of those who thought much the same as Hus.
And what use will that be to me?
I can't say, but it came to mind when you were talking about Johanka, because Matthew wrote about similar things, about women who had visions and the like. I've got a copy here. I'll lend it to you if you promise to bring it back. You do know how to read, don't you?
Of course I do.
By Christ, lad, you're a regular scholar. Here you are, then. I'm sure it's in good hands. You can bring it back to me when you're passing again.
Ah, all right, thanks.
You're welcome, lad. Now run along and don't keep Johanka waiting.
Mother of God. You look like you've been assaulted.
I'm interested in your services.
Uh-huh. And what do you want?
Proper bath. And my clothes need washing.
That can be arranged, but you'll pay in advance.
Fine. Here it is.
I'm sure you'll be extremely satisfied. Good luck.
I'd like to make...
So what are you in?
I'd like that.
That can be arranged.
Fine.
I'm sure you'll be extremely satisfied. Take care.
Yeah.
What do you want? Know your hunker here.
Where's your hunker?
She's locked up at the rat house. Orders of the bishop.
Locked up? For what?
For heretical speeches. Run along now. If you want to chat about it, go and talk to that monk who smells like an apothecary shop. He's in a flap about it too. Take care.
What happened to your hunker?
Nothing good, I'm sorry to say. She was locked up by the papal inquisitor Bishop Yaroslav of Benishov. It seems he somehow caught wind of this preaching of hers. He's accused her of spreading heresy and had her placed under arrest.
Jesus Christ! What's going to happen to her?
I don't know, Henry. It all depends on the inquisitor and how he decides. The accusations brought against Johanka are very serious.
Well, we must do something.
Well, you can try talking to Bishop Yaroslav. He can tell you more. As a servant of the royal hetman, your name ought to carry some weight with him. But watch your step. This matter is entirely in the hands of church law, so you mustn't overestimate your lay authority here.
Right. I'll go and see this Bishop Yaroslav of Benishov.
May God go with you. And thank you, Henry. I'm glad you're standing up for your hanker. If you need anything, do come and see me.
Where can I find this Inquisitor?
He's staying here in the monastery grounds. His quarters are on the upper floor.
What actually happened here?
Quiet!
Your hanker told me you went to Auschwitz?
Yeah? What's that got to do with anything?
The Inquisitor showed up here not long after you left. Apparently he heard about Johanka's preaching somehow. He even observed one of her sermons outside the town in disguise. He had her brought to him and spent a long time trying to discourage her from what she was doing. But then she went out again to preach about her visions outside of town. But before she even started, the Inquisitor turned up with Fabian and the guards. He said Johanka had ignored his outright ban, and he had her taken away. Then he warned the people there that Johanka was spreading heresy and undermining the church's authority, and forbade them to listen to her.
That's all? Didn't you speak to the Inquisitor?
No, actually I didn't. He saw me there listening to her preaching, and I was afraid to come forward and talk to him.
Aha. Well, that's understandable.
Thanks.
It sounds pretty serious.
It is. I'm afraid it could be very serious indeed.
What actually happened here?
Johanka told me
Yeah?
the Inquisitor showed up here not long after you left. Apparently he heard about Johanka's preaching somehow. He even observed one of her sermons outside the town in disguise. He had her brought to him and spent a long time trying to discourage her from what she was doing. But then she went out again to preach about her visions outside of town. But before she even started, the Inquisitor turned up with Fabian and the guards. He said Johanka had ignored his outright ban, and he had her taken away. Then he warned the people there that Johanka was spreading heresy and undermining the church's authority, and forbade them to listen to her.
It sounds pretty serious.
It is. I'm afraid it could be very serious indeed.
What exactly does an Inquisitor do?
The Inquisition is a papal institution that deals with heresy, so people don't succumb to charlatans, false prophets and deceptions, and put their faith and their immortal souls in jeopardy. The Inquisitors have all sorts of powers, the kind we here can do very little to stand up to.
And what can he do to Johanka?
I'm not entirely sure. These legal issues are very complicated, but he could certainly excommunicate her, and maybe even sentence her to death.
Quiet!
Who is this Bishop Yaroslav?
I've never heard of him before, but the prior has. He said he's very well learned and the Bishop of Sarepta.
Sarepta? Where's that, Moravia?
No, it's far, far away, near the Holy Land. He got the title from the Holy Father himself.
And this bishop came all the way here from whatever?
Sarepta, but I doubt he's ever been there. It used to be a bishopric in the days of the Apostolic Fathers in Phoenicia, near Israel, but it was ransacked by the Muslims. Now it's just a titular bishopric, and Yaroslav is the titular bishop.
Titular bishop? Like he's not a real one?
It's, let's say, an honorary title. It refers to a diocese that no longer exists. And since a titular bishop has no diocese to oversee, he can devote himself to handling other very important church affairs, like ordaining other prelates, for example, to maintain succession through the centuries down from the time of Christ and his apostles.
Do you believe Johanka is really being visited by the Virgin Mary?
Well, yes, Henry, I do. The things she says and the way she speaks. She doesn't sound like herself at all. I know she can't read, so where else could she have got it? Frankly, I can't think of any other explanation, within the bounds of this world.
See you later.
can't. I just can't.
Sir, I am...
Henry of Skalitz, from the garrison of the Royal Hetman, Sir Radzig Kobyla. I've heard a lot about you, my son. I'm pleased to meet you.
Bishop Yaroslav? Sir? My lord, to what do I owe your interest in my humble self?
I was told you survived the massacre in Skalitz and warned the Townburg garrison. You tracked down the raiders of a stud farm in Neuhof, wasn't it? To their hideout in the woods. And then you led Sir Radzig and his armed company there and joined bravely in the skirmish, and even killed their notorious leader by your own hand. And I believe you have many other deeds to your name. That's quite remarkable, considering your age, is it not?
Well, you're too kind, Monsignor. I'm just trying to do what's right, and what's needed.
Quite rightly, too, my son. I expect we'll be hearing more about you. But I assume you didn't come here to exchange pleasantries. Or am I mistaken?
No, Monsignor, you're quite right. I'm here about Johanka.
Naturally. I'd be quite surprised if it were otherwise. So, tell me what's on your mind.
How did you find out about Johanka?
Word came to me of what was happening here. That some young girl was claiming to speak for the Blessed Virgin. I traveled here immediately, as my duty demanded, and observed events in Sasau incognito, in order to examine the matter at first hand.
I see. Why did you have her imprisoned?
Because she broke the promise she made to me, and persisted in actions that bear the signs of heresy.
And what will happen to Johanka now?
I must weigh the gravity of her transgressions and investigate these alleged visions of hers. I consider it very improbable that she is indeed being visited by the Blessed Virgin. Nevertheless, I cannot at this time rule it out entirely.
So you think it could be true? In that case, Johanka hasn't done anything wrong.
It's not that straightforward. Even if her visions were real, she was at fault for interpreting them as she saw fit and preaching to the people.
So you decide just like that? But you don't even know Johanka.
I certainly do not decide just like that. I'm thoroughly examining the entire matter, and you would be well advised not to question my authority. I will call Johanka and the witnesses, question them, and then pronounce a verdict.
And if you decide she's guilty, will you have her burned at the stake?
Good gracious, no. I have no wish to see her die. As St. Augustine said, heretics should be saved, not put to death. The triumph of the Church is their salvation, not their death, even if they deserve it. If I find her guilty of any heresy, she will be punished, but the severity of her punishment will depend on her will to repent and make amends.
I see. And will there be anyone there to defend Johanka?
Do you doubt my judgment?
I would never be so bold, sir. But surely it would be only just that someone should speak for Johanka about all her good deeds and so forth.
Naturally, I will also question those who would speak in her defense. Since you are interceding, I expect you have someone in mind?
Yes. Actually, me.
As I surmised. But this matter does not directly concern you. Why should I allow you to appear before the court?
Johanka is my neighbour, and I have a Christian duty to come to her aid. I can't just stand by and do nothing.
I have to concur with you on that. Your concern seems sincere, so I will grant your request. Very well. You will defend Johanka. You may speak in her defense if you so wish, and you may also bring witnesses. I will question any such witnesses, and naturally I shall question Johanka too.
Thank you, Monsignor. In that case, I'll need to speak to Johanka first.
That won't be possible. It's forbidden by the Inquisition procedure. Until the entire matter is resolved, Johanka can speak only to me and no one else. I would like to expedite the matter. The trial will take place in Sassaw Church in 3 days' time at the latest. Come and let me know when you're ready to proceed. In the meantime, I will continue my investigation.
Very well, Monsignor. I had better get on with it then, sir. Farewell.
Before you go, you know Johanka longer than anyone else. You spent a lot of time with her, as I've discovered. Tell me, my son, truthfully, what do you think of this whole affair?
About the Virgin Mary? I believe the Virgin does visit her. Johanka is honest. She wouldn't lie about such a thing. And the things she says sound truthful and compelling. It really does seem like a heavenly revelation. Who else could it be from? But the Virgin Mary.
The origin of these so-called visions of hers must be investigated. But thank you for your candor. Is there anything else you can tell me?
Johanka is an honest girl and virtuous. She's a good Christian who attends church and thinks of others.
Good. Please continue.
She's worried about Matthias. He's from Skalitz too, and she's very fond of him. But he was wounded in a raid on Merhojed recently, and since then he's been lying in a fever. Johanka believes that if she does what the Blessed Virgin wants of her, Matthias might be healed.
Interesting. Anything else?
Well, before, in Skalitz, Johanka was sort of, well, just a simple village girl. I never imagined I'd hear her talking the way she does now. She's completely transformed.
A simple village girl. I see. Do continue.
Johanka helped a lot of people. She worked her fingers to the bone helping Brother Nicodemus with the sick and injured.
That is certainly commendable. What else can you tell me about her?
That's about all I can tell you.
Is that really everything?
I have nothing more to add, Monsignor.
Very well. Thank you, my son. One more thing before you go. Let me remind you that it's your Christian duty to report anything suspicious going on concerning the church and the true faith. If you're aware of anything of the sort in these parts, if you prove yourself a commendable servant of the church, I would also take that into account in judging Johanka's case.
All right, Monsignor. I'll bear that in mind.
See you later.
Monsignor, Johanka is just a simple village girl from Skalitz. Are all these legal proceedings really necessary?
They are. The mission of the Inquisition is quite unequivocal, and however trivial, this matter has a broader significance.
What broader significance?
No offense, but these things can't easily be explained to an uneducated boy like you. Still, I'm pleased that you take an interest. Unfortunately, I don't have time for this now. If you really want to know more, ask my assistant. After all, it is also our duty to guide others through the labyrinth of this world.
But Johanka was visited by the Virgin Mary, so what she says can't be wrong.
We only have her word for that, and even if her visions were real, she was at fault for interpreting them as she saw fit and preaching to the people.
So you think she should have spoken to the parish priest about it?
Exactly. And the priest would have sent for someone who would look into the matter. Like me, for instance. In short, it's not for her to interpret such things in her own way. If people believed her and started thinking what they want about it, soon everyone would be adrift in confusion, and the true message would be lost.
Aha. I think I understand.
I'm glad you do, my son.
But what's so bad about what Johanka has been saying?
Look here. It's simply unacceptable that anyone at all should come along and stand up in the market square and preach about God's will or how he or she interprets it. God gave us his teachings, which we must honor, and he showed us how to fulfill them. It is only those teachings that lead us on the path to salvation and God's grace. But understanding those teachings is no simple matter. It demands learning, time, and effort. That is one of the tasks of Holy Mother Church. What Johanka has been saying is dangerously close to heresy. She must be brought to see the error of her ways, and her disruptive actions must cease.
But Johanka hasn't done anything against God. On the contrary, she's devout, and she's trying to redeem sinners.
Perhaps, but she's also incited disobedience to the nobles, and that is a serious accusation. Think of it like this. You have to pass through a dark forest filled with hazards. Many paths lead to that forest, but only one will lead you safely through it. You know which is the right path, but others don't. Would you show them the right path, or leave each to choose his own and very likely lose his way?
I'd show them the right path, but it would be up to them whether to take it or not.
But then many would lose their way and die. Because of you. Where it concerns God's mercy and grace, we cannot allow that to happen. You must understand that it is the mission of the Church to care for the soul of every person. It is our sacred duty to lead the people to salvation.
But that's just what Johanka was doing. Trying to show people the right path.
And what makes you so convinced the path was the right one?
Well, I just think so.
You see, that's exactly the reason why Johanka's actions were wrong.
Monsignor, I've heard of various irregularities in the province that might be of interest to you.
Very good, my son. A good Christian certainly shouldn't conceal such things. Please, speak.
Well, the parish priest in Wicket is rather unorthodox. Not that he's a bad person, not at all. He takes good care of his flock, no doubt. It's just that he drinks quite a lot. In fact, he's even said mass while drunk. And, he keeps a concubine.
That distresses me. All the more so because what you describe isn't at all unique amongst the clergy. Thank you for telling me, Henry. Matters like this certainly must be addressed.
The former parish priest of Rovna, Father Simon, went missing one day. Everyone thought he'd fled from the province, but in fact he just went to the woods and became a hermit.
I see. Why did he do that?
Because he got some girl pregnant. child died during birth, though, and the mother too. He took it to be retribution for his sin. So he fled far from people, because he didn't feel fit to be their pastor anymore.
That's very interesting indeed. Where is this Father Simon now?
I tracked him down in the woods and talked him into going back to Rovna. They needed a parish priest there, and Simon was convinced taking on the task would make amends for his sin.
Interesting. Father Simon's story is certainly remarkable. Whether his actions are appropriate for a cleric is another matter, of course. Thank you for telling me about this.
There were Valdensians hiding in Ujits.
Really? And how did you find out about it?
Sir Hanush sent me to help the vicar track them down and catch them.
So, Sir Hanush had an interest in finding them?
Yes, that's right.
I'm pleased to hear it. It's not always possible to see eye to eye with secular lords in such matters. And how did it end up with the members of the sect?
They fled. The vicar is still trying to track them down.
That's unfortunate. Let's hope the vicar succeeds promptly in his mission.
Some women in Ujit went to the herbalist for magic ointment. Then they went to the woods, smeared this ointment on themselves, and engaged in all sorts of incantations and spells.
What? Witchcraft? God have mercy. They must be brought to justice. Who is this herbalist they visited?
Not to worry, Monsignor. Father Godwin put a stop to it.
Well, that's good news at least. Witchcraft will not be tolerated under any circumstances.
A demon's skull was found on the church building site.
Yes, I heard something about it. A disturbing report. Tell me what you know about it.
It was a deception, sir. Someone made it with evil intentions, to frighten people. I found the skull and brought it to the local knacker. He confirmed it was a human skull with animal horns stuck on.
You did the right thing, Henry, in uncovering the deception and in telling me about it.
There are interesting things going on inside the monastery.
In the monastery? What kind of things?
The monks in the monastery are very concerned with the election of the new abbot. There's a lot of scheming going on over it.
But how do you know about it? How does a servant of the royal hetman come by knowledge of the confidential affairs of the Brotherhood of Monks?
I caught wind of it. I heard it from a novice that the brothers were sending out at night to buy wine for them.
I see. And what was the name of this novice?
Yodok.
There is a novice of that name at the monastery. I shall have to speak to the prior about these matters. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. If you've nothing else to tell me, you may leave.
That's all, Monsignor.
All right, Henry. Thank you. And I hope you're not keeping anything from me.
Why did you have your hand...
I talked to her for... I warned her that she had to stop Johanka chose to ignore my warning. Obviously, I couldn't turn a blind eye to that kind of disobedience. God be with you.
I hope I can be of help to you, Knight.
The bishop told me this business with Johanka has a wider context, and that you tell me about it.
Oh, very well. If the bishop says so. Look, it's like this. The world as a whole is not in a good state. For decades, people have been perishing from a terrible sickness, the Black Death. There's an anti-pope in Avignon in France who defies the authority of the throne of St. Peter. The people are frightened. Many of the nobles, instead of caring for peace on earth, are warring one against another. The authority of many monarchs, and even the emperor, is unfortunately too weak to put things to rights. Many scholars have even started to question established truths, and various contentious teachings have appeared, such as those of the Englishman, Wycliffe.
The Black Death?
The plague, my child. A dreadful disease that claimed countless lives. By the grace of God, these parts were not much afflicted, but it took a terrible toll in the surrounding countries. First, the Italian ports were stricken, Venice and Genoa, and then nearly the whole of Christendom. Some regard it as God's punishment for our sins, or even a sign of the approaching parousia.
What?
The parousia, the second coming of Christ. The day when he returns to this world will mark the end of the ages. The dead will rise, and all people will face final judgment for their sins.
Oh. Do you think that's going to happen?
Most assuredly. But God alone knows when that will be.
I hope it won't be too soon. Thanks. I won't bother you anymore.
Goodbye.